morning, rise and freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Today is Wednesday, the 31st of July. Boy, how time flies. Nice to see you guys. Hope everybody's feeling good today. Nice to see you there, Bruce Burt Whistle. Look, it's Liz. How you doing? Mighty Megatron, Quest Fanning, Andy Opperman. You guys must be all part of the 5 a.m. club, or maybe you're just on the East Coast like Quest Fanning. Stephanie and I are settling into parenthood. It's been now 1 week since baby Hazel was born, and we've been loving it. So far, it's been going pretty smooth. Yesterday, she had her first full, well, what we call poop, right? But it's like the first week of pregnancy, for anybody who doesn't know, is kind of like a weird phase of the baby's digestive tract. But now we're like, look, we had a full poopy diaper yesterday, and it was just glorious and stinky. Thanks for changing it, Stephanie. Now, I did change the very first diaper, FYI, just so you know. I will be getting involved in all that stuff. Having a wonderful time. Being a dad just feels great. I love my daughter. I love my wife. I love my mother-in-law, who came into town for a couple of weeks to help out around the house as we get ourselves back on our feet. You should see Stephanie. She snapped back like she wasn't even pregnant. She was doing karate kicks while she was 9 months pregnant, a couple of days before she gave birth. And she was doing karate kicks a couple of nights ago as she just snapped right out of it like, again, nothing had ever happened. And I'm so proud of her. I love her. Stephanie, you are amazing. Yes, we're back to work. Project 2025 will give a free baby to every household, yes.
How dare you?
Donald Trump murders, assassinates Project 2025. This is a Heritage Foundation think tank paper written in about 900 pages that outlined what they hoped would be the priorities of the next Trump administration. Donald Trump's initially had said he had nothing to do with it. He didn't know who was behind it. But as of yesterday, Donald Trump buried Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation learned a hard lesson in Trumpism yesterday. The director of the project resigned from Heritage as the think tank started to wind down or kind of mute this 900-page policy report, because Donald Trump's campaign came out and said that they had nothing to do with it. They said reports of Project 2025's demise would be greatly welcomed and should serve as notice to anyone or any group trying to misrepresent their influence with President Trump and his campaign. They wrote, "It will not end well for you." Gangster, straight gangster. Now, listen, I know, and conservatives pounced, right? How dare you? And a lot of the people who are already mad at Trump on the Republican right, mostly conservatives who were butthurt that Trump so resoundingly defeated Ron DeSantis of Florida, and they're saying they've become never Trumpers, many of them saying he's betrayed my conservative principles. So don't quite understand that Donald Trump is not a conservative. So he's not betraying conservative principles if he was not and is not a conservative. So we're going to have a conversation about this. I'm going to try and squeeze it all in. And I got a billion clips, and many of them are quite funny and hilarious, including a blue puppet asking black people in the hood who they're going to be voting for. I definitely want to play that. But I got another straight gangsta coming on at 7:30 a.m. Central. Donald Trump's own attorney, Will Scharf. He's also running for attorney general here in the state of Missouri, and he got the Trump endorsement. But wait, there's more. So did his opponent in the Republican primary. What? So this is the second race in Missouri where Donald Trump has kind of endorsed everybody. And the third time, I think, overall, because in the last election where our current U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt was running against our former governor, Eric Greitens, both of them were named Eric, and Donald Trump came in and says, "I endorse Eric in the race." So Will Scharf, the attorney general candidate and Donald Trump's personal lawyer, running for running for office here in the state of Missouri as Attorney General against our current Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, who's a good guy, who's done a lot of good stuff. And I don't have anything negative to say about him, but Will Scharf is kind of like the star of the moment to a large extent because he's the president's attorney and has been kicking ass at the Supreme Court and, getting Trump out of all of these legal kerfuffles that he's been involved in around the country. It's just such kind of a pain to watch Trump endorse both the sitting Attorney General of Missouri and his attorney, Will Scharf. Will be on the show at 7:30. Just an FYI, I have reached out to Attorney General Andrew Bailey to have him on my show. I like to try and offer as much equal time as I can to candidates, and we did go through a booking process. But after 2-3 times rescheduling, I was just kind of like, screw it. I don't have to, unless it's like Donald Trump himself. How hard do you have to work to chase somebody down? He's not going to get you a billion viewers anyway. So Will Scharf will be joining us at 7:30 a.m. Central Time. At 8 o'clock this morning, we're going to hear from Judge Napolitano. He's back, baby. I'm excited to talk to the judge. It's been about a month, maybe 3 weeks. 2 weeks or so. So yeah, the second attorney on our show. We actually have 3 attorneys on the Wake Up America show today. I know Courtney Conover was saying very snidely yesterday, very snootily, Austin, you need to get some other attorneys other than Judge Napolitano on the show. Well, we got 3 attorneys today, Courtney. What you gonna say? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, bad boys. At 8 o'clock, we're going to speak to Judge Napolitano about the threats that Joe Biden is making against the Supreme Court, the potential reforms they are calling it. We're going to hear from him about that, as well as another leak that was reported that came out about fights that were happening internally inside the Supreme Court. We'll hear from Judge Napolitano about that this morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. You don't want to miss that. At 8:30 a.m. Central Time today, we are going to hear from we're going to hear from a U.S. Latin American envoy, our friend Tony Martinez, to talk about the situation on the ground in Venezuela, where the dictator Nicolas Maduro has reported that he has won the election despite all of the polls coming out showing that he lost the election. But it doesn't matter. When you are a dictator, you just say that you won the election. This kind of stuff, stealing votes, stealing elections, this only happens in Latin American countries. Only happens in Latin American countries. And we're going to speak this morning to our friend Tony Martinez about the situation and the escalation of violence that's occurring in Venezuela. It affects us because there are how many millions of Venezuelan illegal immigrants who have come to the United States fleeing Venezuelan socialism. Maybe we should send them back, and then they can go and they can fight Maduro and get him out of office. But it sounds, at least from what we understand right now, that the military is siding with the protesters in the state of Venezuela, but it hasn't been 2 weeks yet. And as we all know, 2 weeks is kind of the universal, hey, it's time to get paid. And guess who pays their salary? Well, technically, it's the people who get their money stolen, but Maduro's the one who signs the checks. So when it's time to pay the soldiers, it's a bit effy about where their loyalties will lie. It's always on payday that you can find out where somebody's loyalties lie. So we're going to speak to Tony Martinez this morning on the Wake Up America show at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. So 3 lawyers. I know, according to some of you will be happy about that. Some of you are like, lawyers.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Shadow Collector knows what's up over in the live stream with his brilliant 200 IQ comment. He says Trump was never a conservative or a libertarian, but an aggressive bargain striker. And the irony is the way Democrats resisted him endlessly. It pushed Trump to the right. Very good analysis. Dad Bob Baboon recommends I should get Nick Rakita. He was a lawyer, and this should be an interesting interview. Please correct me if I'm wrong on this one, and this is not to smear or slander Nick Rakita at all because I don't know him, but from everything I've seen lately and on the YouTube videos that have popped up in my recommendations, he's in some kind of legal hot water involving giving drugs to children, and you know how Austin feels about drugs to children. Or at least his kids were being around while they were using some hard drugs. Please tell me if I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's another lawyer that we're thinking about. Just let me know. You can send a text on the show anytime, night or day. If you just want to chat with AP at 573-319-1586. Again, you can send me a text at 573-319-1586. Let us know what's on your mind. You can communicate with me while the show's going on, or if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast later. Make sure also that if you haven't already, that you click that like button. And if today's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, I want you to be a regular guest, and I want to earn your follow. So if you enjoy the show today, before you leave the show and you say, it's time for me to go get some stuff done. Hey, Austin, I've got my own family to worry about. Click the follow button and come back and join us another day. We've got a 5-day-a-week, 2-hour live show here, and it's a great way to stay informed, to be entertained, and to make friends in the chat, which we all tend to hang out over at rumble.com/AP for Liberty. But the numbers over at x.com frequently rival or surpass what we see over on Rumble. I think the problem is that X just hasn't figured out how to really do a good video live stream over there so that we can capture comments and build a community over there. Right now, the real community is at Rumble and on Locals. So hang out with us over at rumble.com/AP for Liberty. Okay, we got it. 161 people watching live. What's up on Rumble, and then 230 over on X.com. We're glad to have you here. Let's get to the news. Donald Trump buried Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation learned a hard lesson in Trumpism. I mean, you almost have to kind of feel sorry for this guy here, this Kevin Roberts. He's the very ambitious president of the Heritage Foundation. You know, he steered the venerable institution away from their conservative principles. And he did this in order to court Donald Trump. And now he's been completely spurned by Donald Trump. And now he's also spurned by the institution that he used to court Donald Trump. Signs of Jonah, what's happening? So Paul Dans, this is the guy who is the director of Project 2025. He resigned from the Heritage Foundation, and the think tank is backing away from the Project 2025 paper. Now, I've got a whole BBC article here that breaks down what Project 2025 is. Donald Trump, the first time he heard about it, disavowed it because he said he didn't write it. He didn't know who was behind it. So this was a think tank trying to foist their views and opinions on a future President Trump future Trump presidency. Okay, so the way that they went about this, despite the fact that everything that I've read, I haven't read all 900 pages, but I've read, their own summaries in brief. Nearly everything that I read from Project 2025 sounds very good. As a matter of fact, the number one thing that they push in Project 2025 proposes that the entire federal bureaucracy, such as the Department of Justice, is placed under direct presidential control. This is known as a unitary executive theory, and that would streamline decision-making, allowing the president to directly implement policies in a number of areas. It would also allow the president of the United States to fire many of these federal workers, essentially a way for us to take aim at the deep state. So there's a lot of good stuff in Project 2025, but Trump didn't write it. Trump didn't have anything to do with it. They tried to foist it on him. And here's the thing, too. Trump understood they were seeing internal polls that were showing that the left's attacks and association of Project 2025 with President Trump was hurting him in the polls. So he said, well, I didn't have anything to do with it. They didn't ask me. They didn't say, hey, let's get your input on this. They were just former Trump officials who worked at the Heritage Foundation that wrote this thing, and then tried to make it out like this was what was going to be the future of the Republican Party. It was all just hopes and wishes and dreams, but Donald Trump threw them under the bus. And I mean, listen, I can't say rightfully so, because I agree with many of the principles the Heritage Foundation is having, but I've been having a beef and bones to pick with Heritage Foundation anyway, because they have abandoned many of their former conservative principles that I agreed with that Donald Trump doesn't. Their job, if they are a think tank, is to advance a set of views, conservative principles. Now, I've always been more of a Cato Institute kind of a guy more than a Heritage Foundation guy, right? Because I'm a libertarian Republican, not a conservative Republican, and there's a difference there, which means that I really truly believe in free markets and individual liberty and limited government, and not this concept that we need to use the government to force everybody to believe what we believe and live according to our principles and lifestyles. Okay, That's a big difference between myself and Heritage Foundation stuff. But there's a lot of overlap, right? There's a lot of things that I agree with. But Project 2025 was them getting too big for their britches, and the Heritage Foundation. And I'll just read this to you straight from the Wall Street Journal, because this is from the editorial board, and they're just giving a tongue lashing to these guys. Here's what they write. So Paul Dans, he was the guy who resigned from Heritage. Trump tossed aside Heritage and their policy recommendations like junk mail. And Mr. Dans, who resigned, was an official in the first Trump administration. Trump campaign officials Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita shot the wounded in a joint statement on Tuesday. Reports of Project 2025 would be greatly welcomed and should serve as a notice to anyone or any group trying to misrepresent their influence with President Trump and his campaign. It will not end well for you. Basically, they pulled out a 9, bust a cap, go 187 on a mother. You know what I'm saying. Mr. Roberts explained in a letter to the editor nearby that Project 2025 was an attempt to offer ideas to debate and govern, but his mistake was thinking that Mr. Trump cares about anyone's ideas other than his own. Very true. He governs on feral instinct, tactical opportunism, and what seems popular at a given moment. Very true, Wall Street Journal editorial board. I don't always agree with the Wall Street Journal editorial board, and what they're saying here is pretty savage. But I agree with him in this article. He says, this is a hard, or they say, this is a hard education for Mr. Roberts, who made a loud cause of opposing aid to Ukraine when it became the view of the likes of J.D. Vance. He also adopted the line that anyone who resisted the new right-wing populism of Mr. Trump was a, quote, nostalgic Reaganite who doesn't know what time it is. Camelia, if you're listening to this, has got to be loving this right now, because her and I have been having these conversations about how the Heritage Foundation has been walking back away from its Reaganite roots. I mean, Heritage Foundation and Ronald Reagan were like peas and carrots, right? They were like peanut butter and jelly. And so this Mr. Dans guy, who now resigned from the Heritage Foundation and is a former Trump official, just got whacked after they had taken the foundation, the Reaganite foundation of the Heritage Foundation, and ripped it asunder, ripped on all of their old Reaganite roots in order to try and appeal to Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump just put, 2 9mm rounds in the back of their head, Full Metal Jacket. You just kind of have to love and appreciate the irony here this is just straight gangster from the Trump administration. You are a liability to me. You were my friend. You broke my heart, Fredo. No. Let's go fishing. Right? So the lesson for Heritage, writes the Wall Street Journal, and other think tanks, is that it's better to stick to your principles rather than court the political flavor of the day, and never trust a politician. True. Very true. Going 187 on an undercover cop. Yes, thank you, Barney. Do you know what song that is? Who's it by? You get a full-blown, delicious piece of lox salmon this morning, and I'll even put it in an ice cream cheese spread for you on top of a beautiful everything bagel. One listener texted in for the very first time from the 206. Good morning. Didn't introduce themselves, but I do appreciate when people text us. This is your first time texting us, so welcome and good morning. This is what the 206 said. Project 2025 was a CIA hit against Trump, meant to look just enough like something conservatives want, but just crazy and tyrannical enough to make everyone hate it. Think tanks are very lazily concealed intelligence front. That is not necessarily not true. What does that mean? Double negative there, AP. What am I saying? I'm saying that yes, that intelligence agencies do frequently use think tanks as fronts to try and advance their agenda. I know, I worked for some. Which ones? Let's see. What's up? Naomi Reeves over on YouTube got it. The YouTube crowd pulled it out. Naomi, or is it Naomi? It is. I thought it said Numi. Naomi Reeves got it. Sublime. Yes. Summertime and the living's easy. Bradley's on the microphone with Ross MG. All the people in the dance will agree that we're Well qualified to represent the LBC. Me and Louis, we gonna run to the party, dance to the rhythm, it gets harder. Me and my girl, we got this relationship. I love her so bad, but she treats me like I'm locked down like a penitentiary. She spreads her loving all over, and when she gets home, there's none left for me.
What is your favorite Kamala Harris accomplishment? Is Kamala your mamala?
No.
The presidential contest looks like it's going to be Trump versus Kamala. Who's your pick to win? Who's your pick to win the presidency?
Trump winning that.
I don't think she'll win. A lot of people love Trump.
Who's your pick?
Me.
Who's your pick to win?
Jesus.
Wait, is he on the ballot?
I don't know whether Kamala Harris actually is like the top candidate actually for America at the moment.
Trump has it more planned out, economy-wise, did more, and people are happy.
Life was a lot less expensive back then.
Trump for sure. I'm more
For sure.
into Trump.
I think Donald Trump might still have the upper hand.
You ain't black.
If you vote for Trump, are you still black?
All day. Don't look so surprised.
I'm not surprised.
Don't
That's
look
my
surprised.
I have resting surprise face.
Who has more street cred, Trump or Kamala?
Oh, I can't. Never mind. I'm not even gonna say that.
Is that a trick question?
It's a public question.
Come on, man.
Let's not lie. Trump really did have some street cred back in the day.
He was glamorized by rappers all over
Yeah.
until he said, I'm not a Democrat any longer. Then they
Yeah.
started to trash his ass.
Yeah.
Who has more street cred, Trump or Kamala?
I would say Trump.
By a mile.
I think Donald.
Oh, Trump definitely.
Definitely Donald J. Trump.
Trump, definitely Trump.
Definitely Trump.
He has the sauce. Unfortunately, he does have the sauce.
The orange sauce.
I would say Trump. Trump.
Is it because Kamala's an attorney who incarcerated a lot of black dudes? And
It's Kamala.
Kamala like Mamala, not Kamala like camel toe.
That picture of him getting shot with the fist and the blood.
Yep.
I've seen it in black and white. That could be an album cover.
How can Kamala top that?
She would have to almost get her head chopped off.
Oh, no,
And then fight the people.
No, we don't want that. Do I have street cred? I ain't got nothing. What is your favorite Kamala Harris accomplishment?
Jeez.
Name one.
Has she accomplished anything?
I don't know.
Does
I'm
she
not
have
really-
any?
I'm not even sure. I'm not.
No f***ing clue. She just laughs a lot. Laughing when she's not supposed to. I couldn't answer. I don't even know if she has any.
What is your favorite Kamala Harris accomplishment?
What's your favorite Kamala Harris accomplishment?
Well, I gotta go back to work.
All right, thank you.
Everything.
Can you be
D,
more
the
specific
answer is-
besides everything?
It's D, all of the above. Her education.
No, you haven't listed one thing.
The job of the vice president to accomplish really anything. They preside over meetings and they
Yeah, she
preside.
presided over a mummy, wheeling him around from room to room, checking his forage.
Edgar.
I can't even think of it right now. I'm just
Yeah,
glad
me
she
neither.
shows up for work.
What does she do at work besides being a border czar?
She keeps this corner safe for you guys to talk to folks.
Well,
That's
no,
a
I
big
got
deal.
stabbed by an illegal alien 5 minutes ago. Which candidate will hurt your wallet the least?
The least?
The least.
Oh, the least.
The least.
Oh, the least. Trump. I'm thinking
Trump.
Trump might hurt my wallets less because he has a whole body behind him. She
Well,
has to,
the
really-
price of everything did kind of go up under Kamala. All I know is I'm living in a cardboard box now. Which candidate will harm your wallet the least, in your opinion?
Shit, neither one of them. They both after our money.
Oh, true. Probably true. Yes. Good job. Ask America with Edgar there. Thanks for that video interview there. Ask America with Edgar. Funny stuff. All right. So here's the deal. I'm going to go get our buddy Will Scharf. He just got the Donald Trump endorsement, but so did his opponent. Will Scharf is Donald Trump's attorney. We're going to talk to him about 5 minutes from now, but here's the dealio. We're going to do a quick commercial break so that I can go get Will on the phone. He's not going to be able to do a video interview, unfortunately, today. We will have a phoner with him. But if you guys don't want to watch commercials, did you know that I produce for you a 5-minute mini documentary every single day? And I have been doing this now for the last 3 months. And let me tell you how hard it is to come up with ideas for this show. However, I have produced another mini documentary for you today. This week's theme is vice presidents who became the president in honor of Kamala Harris's ascension to the presidential candidate nominee for the Democratic Party. So if you are interested in seeing today's mini documentary, then you've got to get Rumble Rants in. Right now, we are $0 towards the $60 total, but I haven't been plugging it very hard. I get it. I understand. So if you would like to see today's mini documentary, you've got to send in some Rumble Rants. Or what I recommend that you do, if you like to get a little something for your money, which I totally understand, then you should visit forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4, forlibertyshop.com. Our buddy Doug Ashby has some sweet laser-etched wooden coaster sets that you can get exclusively at the For Liberty shop. It comes with not only 4 wooden coasters of Donald Trump with his fist in the air, but it also comes with the box to hold them as well. And you can get that delivered to your front door for $34.99. So definitely head over to forlibertyshop.com. So we sold a lot of our Courage Under Fire shirts, like the Donald Trump album cover blackout unisex jersey tank of him with his fist in the air looking like a gangsta, straight gangsta, OG. But also a lot of people really like my Donald Trump manga tee. The Donald Trump Lives Japanese manga tee, very popular, and we have sold these in Japan. It says on the left in Japanese, like a manga comic, Donald Trump wa itikeiru, and you could get that exclusively, again, because I designed it, got freaking flies in here, exclusively at forlibertyshop.com. If we sold 2 of these shirts right now, that would unlock the bonus content, because all you have to do is we just have to accrue at least $60 by the end of the show for us to unlock the bonus content. And I have 3 guests, so instead of watching commercials, it would be way more fun to just get yourself some cool swag at the For Liberty shop, and then you get to unlock the bonus content instead of watching commercials. Isn't that cool? Yes. Thank you, Sign of Jonah. Kicking us off, $5 raised towards the $60 goal. There we go. All right, it's time to go. Let me go get my buddy Will Scharf. He's running for Attorney General. Next week's the primary. He got the Trump endorsement. So did his opponent. It's weird. It's wild. It's wacky. It's the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network.
Cantina crew, this is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter, and I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? You can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist! Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins!
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. It's time to rise and freedom. Glad and thankful to have you here. Click that like button if you haven't already. If today is your first time watching the Wake Up America show and you appreciate this kind of content, make sure you click that follow button as well and join us for our regular schedule, which is every Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time, 2 hours in the morning during your weekday. It's a great way to start your day and make some new friends over at rumble.com/AP for Liberty. Well, as you know, the Wake Up America show streams live from the heart of the United States, in the heart of Missouri, Jefferson City, where our current Attorney General Andrew Bailey sits. Now, Andrew Bailey hasn't done a bad job, but I think I know somebody who could do a better job as Attorney General in the state of Missouri. In fact, he got the Donald Trump endorsement. He's the man who is responsible for many of the most important court decisions that have helped to save Donald Trump's skin in the previous few months. He's running for Attorney General in Missouri. He's got the endorsement, but so does his opponent. You guys know him. He's been on here before. Will Scharf joining us live on the phone this morning. Good morning, Will. And hey, man, congrats on endorsement. An endorsement's an endorsement, right?
An endorsement's an endorsement. You know, it's been the honor of my lifetime to get to fight for President Trump in courtrooms across America, including at the U.S. Supreme Court, where we've won victory after victory for him. He called me a very talented lawyer, and I hope the people of Missouri agree. I'm excited to deliver hopefully massive courtroom wins for the people of Missouri, the same way I have for President Trump. And we're just excited to close out this race strong here.
Did you feel any certain sort of way when he did to you guys in your race the same thing that he did for the governor's race here? He endorsed all three of our governor candidates, Ashcroft and Eigel. I mean, it's kind of frustrating, right?
It's something about Missouri. You know, in 2022, he endorsed the Erics, and then this year we've seen these multiple endorsements again. I spoke to the president yesterday. He was in good spirits. I think he thought the situation was a little bit funny. But yeah, we're excited to have his endorsement. We're going to be pushing that out statewide as much as we can. And we're hitting the trail hard. As I told you when we were off the air, I'm down in Southwest Missouri right now. We're doing kind of a final swing through the state in these last few days. And we're really excited about the way the race is shaping up.
Well, it has been an exciting race, Will, and certainly it's been even more exciting to see how you've become something of a national figure. Your appearances on Fox News, arguing in front of the Supreme Court, and it makes me feel a great sense of personal pride as a fellow Missourian to see someone like yourself become a national figure with such stature. So, I mean, no matter what happens next week in the primary, Will, I just have to say, I think that you're going to be fine no matter what, but you've done a terrific job and you certainly have a lot to be proud of. But we do hope that the good people of Missouri see fit to vote for you next week. I certainly am doing so. You're one of my very few endorsed candidates this year. So I do wish you the best of luck. That being said, Will, let's talk a little bit about some of the issues. One listener texted in this morning. We try and be as responsive as possible to people who want to ask questions. And this has been a big issue here in the state of Missouri, but I think people who listen around the country will be curious to hear your thoughts on our Second Amendment Preservation Act, which was a bill that was passed here in Missouri that would prevent the feds from commandeering Missouri police officers to assist them in federal investigations for gun crimes that are federal crimes that are not state crimes. In other words, if something's not illegal as a gun crime in the state of Missouri, Missouri cops could not be commandeered by the feds to enforce those laws, but a federal court threw that law out. Where's that at? Where do you stand on that? I mean, you're a former federal prosecutor. I mean, wouldn't you take the Fed's side on this? Where do you stand on the question of?
No, absolutely not. I'm 100% in favor of SAPA. You know, the Biden administration has been the absolute worst when it comes to our Second Amendment rights. Really from the get-go. You know, we saw the pistol brace rule where the ATF tried to, with the stroke of a pen, redefine 10 to 40 million lawfully owned firearms as illegal. I actually own a number of braced weapons that are subject to that rule. So I personally have a real interest, and I think the state has a real interest in standing up to the Biden administration on Second Amendment issues. Unfortunately, what happened there, this is a failure of the Bailey administration. They sought to stay from the U.S. Supreme Court, seeking to keep SAPA in effect. They lost that case. It's one of a number of losses from the Bailey administration where we've seen over and over and over again. They come on strong and they tweet about it and go on TV. And then in court, the results just haven't followed. So I'm hopeful that we can get in, we can successfully defend that law. We can make sure that Missourians' Second Amendment rights are defended. I'm not going to bow down to the Biden folks or really any other leftists who want to take away our Second Amendment rights. I think the Second Amendment is the most important right guaranteed in our Bill of Rights. It's absolutely essential to our system of ordered liberty. It's an absolutely essential safeguard against tyranny.
Is there any potential path to revitalize SEPA, or would it have to be passed again by the legislature and signed by the governor?
No, I think there is a path. You know, there's only been sort of preliminary, it's only been preliminarily litigated so far. So it's a case that's ongoing, but losing that stay from the U.S. Supreme Court's a very big deal. It's very unfortunate. I think, look, there's always a path if you're a good enough lawyer and you're creative enough. That's what we've seen with Trump's cases over and over and over again. People said that we had no chance on presidential immunity, and then we won a massive 6-3 win at the U.S. Supreme Court on that one. So no, SEPA's not dead. Reports of its death have been wildly exaggerated. I'm excited to get into office and fight for it the way I'm going to fight for all of Missourians' rights.
That's good to hear, Will. Now, Will, you know me personally. You know that while I tend to live a rather conservative lifestyle, sometimes I like to party. I come from the sex, drugs, and rock and roll wing of the Republican Party, and sometimes I like to go to the casinos, maybe the Ameristar Casino out there in your stomping grounds, or maybe I like to go to the ones in Kansas City. I don't spend a lot of money. Sometimes I even go to Las Vegas and I like to play a little blackjack. And the other day I was watching the Olympics and I noted this, and I'm not a big sports guy, but I saw that two biological men were going to be facing off against biological women in the sports section of the Olympics. So dudes in dresses are going to be beating the hell out of females. And I said to myself, Will, I want to bet on the outcome of those boxing matches, because I think if a dude is fighting a woman, that the man is going to win every time. But it's illegal for me to bet on sports here in the state of Missouri, Will. I could make a lot of money betting on transgender dudes beating up women in boxing matches, but the state of Missouri says no. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, when you look at gambling policy in this state, this is a great example of the way that Jefferson City has failed the people of Missouri. And it's a great example of, I believe, public corruption. We've seen repeated failures to legalize sports betting the way that numerous other states have. We have very tight regulations and restrictions on gambling in general in this state, which I think is appropriate. But then at the same time, you have tens of thousands of completely illegal slot machines in every gas station in the state, all over the place, in bars and restaurants. These machines are illegal. Jefferson City hasn't done anything about it. I think the law needs to be enforced. I think we need, common sense legislation and regulation on the issue of gambling. And we just don't have that right now.
Okay, well, so I see you do want to crack down on those video lottery terminals, though?
Well, they're not video lottery terminals. They're just illegal slot machines. They're blatantly illegal under state law. I think it's a real problem. And my opponent's obviously on the other side of that issue. He took money from the illegal slot machine people and then immediately pulled his office out of cases involving them. His office has failed to prosecute people for illegal gambling despite having the authority to do so. But again, the fact that this sports betting issue has gotten tied up in the legislature because of the powerful entrenched interests that protect other aspects of the gambling apparatus in this state, it just doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't serve the people of Missouri. That's why I think we need to sort of tear down the Jefferson City edifice. We need to get the insiders out and bring conservative outsiders in to really reshape Missouri in just a better direction for the future.
The Republican primary here in Missouri seems to be completely focused on one singular issue that, in my personal opinion, Will, doesn't put food on the plates of Missouri citizens or affect their lives in many ways. But it completely animates Republican primary voters, which is the question of whether or not we should engage in what might be considered an unconstitutional takings of property property here in the state of Missouri of Chinese nationals. Now, there could be a national security question in something like that. I absolutely understand that. And that's definitely something that could be debated. But one of our gubernatorial candidates, Will, has actually taken it a step forward. Bill Eigel has come out and said that he thinks that absolutely no foreign national whatsoever should be allowed to own Missouri farmland, including our allies like Japan. For example, here in Jefferson City, there is a Japanese Hitachi electronics plant right across the river that creates a lot of good jobs for Jeffersonians. I could understand the Chinese question because of espionage, but would you take that even farther, like someone like Bill Eigel would, and prevent even our allies from owning land in Missouri?
Well, I think we need to talk about the history of this issue first, Austin. What happened here is in 2012 and 2013, the Chinese were trying to buy Smithfield, a massive Missouri company with massive farmland holdings, with massive operations in the state. And you saw the swamp, the Jefferson City swamp, all of the entrenched business interests, even the Farm Bureau, sort of circle the wagons and insist that this is what had to happen, that we had to, for the first time in our state's history, authorize foreign ownership of farmland, and not just a little bit of farmland, but a lot of farmland. And what we've seen since then is the floodgates open and the Chinese buying up farmland, even close to military installations. That's the national security implications you referred to. So I think that we need policy that serves Missourians, not policy that just serves the special interests, which is what we have right now. On the issue in question, I'm much more concerned with folks like China or Iran or Venezuela or countries that are hostile to America owning farmland than I am, let's say, Japan or England or New Zealand or whoever owning farmland. But this is why I think we need serious people in Jefferson City to make these sorts of decisions and not just kowtow to the special interests.
How do you feel about this concept of dual citizenship?
Well, I don't know. Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, see, a lot of the concern comes from the fact that people, we have a certain number of countries where we have the possibility of having dual citizenship. So a lot of the concern that we hear from Republican politicians is that there could be dual loyalty. For example, if someone were to be able to gain a passport from the United States and another foreign country, then they would also have the ability to buy up American land. And therefore, that, you know, if you were to take away their property without due process, it's sort of an unconstitutional takings. So one of the things that Republican politicians have brought up is this, and people like Vivek Ramaswamy and others, is that there really should not be a possibility for people to hold dual passports. You should either be an American citizen or be a citizen of another country. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's deeply problematic. And we've seen here in Missouri that people with Chinese nationality, some of whom are lawful permanent residents or citizens as well, spying on our biotech companies, spying on our industries. Monsanto had a huge issue with this a couple years ago. I think it's a real problem, and I think people abuse our immigration system, even though they have and become citizens, even though they have no intent of actually being loyal to America, of actually upholding their oath. So yeah, I think Vivek Ramaswamy's onto something. I think this is a massive problem, along with really our entire immigration system and obviously the chaos at the border, that we're not doing a good enough job of making sure that people who are in this country, people who are swearing allegiance to the United States, are actually loyal and faithful to their oaths and actually loyal and faithful to the United States.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm speaking to Will Scharf. He's an attorney and a candidate for Attorney General here in the state of Missouri, as well as a lawyer for President Donald Trump. Will, on the subject of intellectual property and the enforcement of laws that would protect intellectual property, I'm in the process right now of seeking a patent for an invention that I think will revolutionize the betting industry. I hope to make $1 billion, go on Shark Tank and do a deal with Mark Cuban on it one day. But as it is right now, if I put that project out into public, even if I have an American patent here, I would expect that the United States would help me to enforce that patent. But if I know for a fact that in China they can just this with Temu and with Shein. They can just knock off my product immediately, sell it for cheaper into American markets, undercut me, and destroy my capability of earning money from the idea that I came up with. What can an attorney general do to protect the intellectual property of Missouri citizens like myself from these Chinese knockoffs that would destroy my ability to create a business and create jobs here in the state of Missouri?
Yeah, well, first of all, if you do go on Shark Tank, I think Herjavec actually has the best record of investments. Cuban is a lot of flash, but some of the other guys there are really talented investors. So I would encourage you to be open to offers from all the sharks. In terms of the actual question that you asked, though, this is a massive issue, and it's one that the Trump administration actually took a really tough line on when President Trump was still in office. Chinese intellectual property theft costs us probably hundreds of billions of dollars a year in economic activity. It's been a massive problem internationally. The Chinese serially expropriate IP from Western countries, and that's been a big part of China's economic rise over the last couple decades. As AG of Missouri, if they're selling products in the state, if there's consumer fraud involved, if we have a jurisdictional hook, we're absolutely going to enforce your rights, and we're absolutely going to protect you and all other Missourians. I would say, though, that if that's an issue that you're concerned about, the single most important thing is getting President Trump back in the White House. He's going to take a much tougher line with China than we've seen out of Biden and Harris. And I think that's just so important now, especially as we enter this era of great power competition with China, that we have a president who's actually going to hold them accountable, who's actually going to make sure that American interests are defended and upheld.
Will, Andrew Bailey is your opponent here in the Republican primary. Could you compare and contrast yourself to him, and what would make you a better candidate than him for the Republican primary here in Missouri next week?
Hey, Austin, I missed that question. I'm sorry. The connection went weird there for a second.
No problem. So my question was, would you mind comparing and contrasting yourself and your positions to your opponent, Andrew Bailey, in this primary?
Yeah, so I'd say two things. First, Bailey's a career Jefferson City insider. You know, he worked for Democrat Attorney General Chris Koster. Then he worked for sort of midway moderate Governor Mike Parson. And now he's sort of tried to recast himself as a MAGA warrior. But the only constant thread throughout his career is that he's part of the Jefferson City establishment. As we've gotten around the state, I haven't had a single voter tell me that they think that Jefferson City's doing a really great job. So I think this election is the key contrast is between a conservative outsider and a Jefferson City insider. That's what we're running on. That's what we think is going to be decisive. I'd also say that I have a record of success in courtrooms across America fighting for President Trump, and including at the U.S. Supreme Court. And when you actually look at Bailey's administration, they're failing in court. Last year, the state of Missouri paid out $28 million in judgments against the state, taxpayer dollars. The previous record was $14 million. Bailey paid out more in judgments against the state from cases that he lost than we paid out in 4 years of Eric Schmidt. He's lost on the Second Amendment. He's lost repeatedly to Planned Parenthood. He's lost on transgender issues. He's lost at the Supreme Court repeatedly. I don't think we can afford 4 more years of this. I think we need good lawyers there. I think we need real leadership in that office. And I think Missourians' rights need to be protected by somebody who knows how. And that's me and my team.
There you go. Will, is there anything else that you would like to share or plug before we let you go today?
Get out and vote on August 6th. This is the most important primary election probably of our lifetimes in Missouri. This is going to define the next generation of Missouri politics. If you're concerned about the future of the state, if you believe that Jefferson City isn't getting the job done, the only way we're going to change things is by getting people to the polls and making sure that the voice of the people is heard. We've been so honored just to get around the state by the support that we've had really in every corner of the state, except for maybe Jefferson City, where I'm not particularly well liked. I think we've got to get this done if we care about building a better future for the state of Missouri.
There he is. He's running for Attorney General of the state of Missouri. He's Donald Trump's attorney. He has a record of winning. So let's help him win next week on the August 6th Republican primary. Hey, Will, if for some reason next week doesn't go the way that you want, I'm going to steal a little bit of one of my viewers' intellectual property. This is the idea that he says I should pitch to you. If next week doesn't work out, we're going to do a show together, and we're going to call it the Scharf tank. What do you say?
Austin, I'm always happy to come on with you. We've been friends for a long time, and I appreciate the support. I appreciate you having me on.
I'm proud of you, Will. You're doing a great job. Keep it up, man, and good luck next week. We're really pulling for you.
Thanks, brother. Really appreciate it.
There you go, Will Scharf. Let's give him a round of applause. What do you say? It's great to hear from the president's lawyer, Donald Trump, really getting him out of a lot of binds. Looks like we got some nice orders this morning over at forlibertyshop.com while we were hanging out with Will. What did we get? What did we get? And did they come from us or did they come from Texas? Did they come from Texas? Oh, no. Looks like our friends stepped in this morning and they said to themselves, well, we would like to see the bonus content on the For Liberty show. Oh, no, one's from Texas. One's from Texas. So let's see. How much have we raised so far towards the bonus content? Looks like we have raised, let's see, $47. I got to do the math while I'm live, which is kind of embarrassing because I can't. 45 and then 52. We've raised $53 towards the $60 goal. Oh my God, we're so close. Guys, don't you want to watch the mini documentary instead of watching commercials when we go to Judge Andrew Napolitano? Come on. Let's not cock block here.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm going to come.
So come on over to forlibertyshop.com. Get yourself some sweet For Liberty Shop gear like our friends do. They just went over there and purchased some delicious Founding Flavors coffee. Here's a quick clip to give you a couple of minutes to get in that last $10 to watch the documentary before Judge Napolitano comes here. I'm going to give you a little bit of time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Abate, am I saying your name right?
Yes, Senator. Thank you.
You are the Deputy Director of the FBI, is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
Is there any doubt in your mind or in the collective mind of the FBI that President Trump was shot in the ear by a bullet fired by the assassin crooks?
Senator, there is absolutely no doubt in the FBI's mind whether former President Trump was hit with a bullet and wounded in the ear. No doubt, there never has been.
Okay.
I've been part of this investigation since the very beginning, and that has never been raised.
You're sure?
Yes.
It wasn't a space laser.
No.
It wasn't a murder hornet.
Absolutely not.
It wasn't Sasquatch.
No, Senator.
It was a bullet.
It was a bullet, Senator. 100%.
Fired by crooks.
Yes, sir.
That hit President Trump in the ear and almost killed him.
100%, Senator.
Okay. Glad we cleared that up.
There you go, Senator John Kennedy. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and give you the bonus content anyway, even though we haven't crossed the line yet. I'm guessing we'll probably be able to raise at least $10 by the rest of the show. I just want to be nice to you guys anyway. I'm in a good mood. I'm a dad. Things are going well. Judge Napolitano is coming up next, and I'm excited to talk to him. Enjoy the bonus content. We'll be right back on the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network.
America show's bonus content this week looks at vice presidents who became presidents in recognition of the potential future presidency of VP Kamala Harris. Harry S. Truman became the 33rd president of the United States upon Franklin Delano Roosevelt's death in 1945. He led the country through the final stages of World War II and the early Cold War. Born in rural Missouri, Truman left his family's farm to lead an artillery unit in France during World War I. After the war, he and an Army friend opened a men's clothing store in Kansas City, Missouri, which eventually failed. Truman turned to politics and was elected presiding judge of the Jackson County Court in 1926. In this role, he built a reputation for honesty and efficiency, paving his way to national recognition. In 1934, Truman was elected to the U.S. Senate. During World War II, he led a Senate committee investigating inefficiency and corruption in the military, earning him national recognition and a spot as vice president in 1944. As vice president, Truman had little influence over American policy. President Roosevelt seldom consulted him, leaving Truman unprepared when Roosevelt died less than 3 months into his term. Despite this, Truman quickly adapted. He helped secure Germany's unconditional surrender in May 1945, ending World War II in Europe. He then attended a peace settlement meeting in Potsdam. In Potsdam, Truman learned of a successful atomic bomb test back home. He warned Japan to surrender, but when they refused, he authorized the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing over 100,000 people. We have used it to shorten the agony of war and save the lives of thousands of young Americans. We will continue until Japan's war-making power is destroyed, Truman declared, marking a controversial presidential decision. Days later, Japan surrendered. However, Truman soon faced a new threat, the Soviet Union's desire to extend communism. In 1947, he introduced the Truman Doctrine to oppose communist aggression worldwide. Truman supported the Marshall Plan, which provided billions to rebuild European economies and prevent communism's spread into Western Europe. Despite these efforts, Cold War tensions rose. In 1949, China fell to communism, and the Soviet Union tested a nuclear bomb. To counter Soviet expansionism, Truman led the U.S. into NATO, a military alliance with non-communist European nations. In 1950, the Korean War broke out as Communist North Korea invaded South Korea. Truman ordered U.S. forces to join UN troops in repelling the invasion, though the war continued past his presidency. The stalemate in Korea and the perception that the U.S. was losing the Cold War led to widespread criticism of Truman. His popularity plummeted, and he chose not to seek re-election in 1952. Truman retired to Missouri with low public approval. However, his reputation improved over time. He came to be seen as a common man who rose to the challenge during critical moments in history. Later presidents admired Truman's willingness to take responsibility. His famous motto, "The buck stops here," symbolized his leadership style and dedication to accountability.
Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Yes, we've undergone a rebrand. That's because the Wake Up America show will be launching 2 brand new shows starting this fall. That's right. We're starting a brand new full-fledged network. It's not just the Wake Up America show or forlibertyshop.com. It's a full-blown For Liberty Network. In conjunction with rumble.com, we're building a brand new network of libertarian ideas, economic freedom, and personal liberty. But we still have a lot of things to learn from people who are far more successful than us. Judge Andrew Napolitano could be a network on his own. His show, Judging Freedom, gets tens of millions of views. We all rise for the good Judge Andrew Napolitano joining us live. It's been a while, Judge. Nice to see you, sir.
It has been. Congratulations to you and to Stephanie on the birth of Hazel. I'm very happy for you and happy for everybody's health and joy.
Thank you very much, Judge. We're very excited to start a new family, and I can't wait to turn her into an enemy of the state. You can count on it.
Well, as soon as she can read, she'll become an enemy of the state.
I know exactly what book I'm going to start her on. It's going to be Ron Paul's The Revolution, and then right after that, A Nation of Sheep, which is what got me converted to the hardcore true North libertarianism.
Right. You're very kind to put me in that company. By the way, I'm teaching a course for the Ron Paul summer seminar on the Bill of Rights, and then giving one of their keynote addresses the next day. Has this 3-day gathering outside of Dulles Airport. It's either Labor Day weekend or the weekend before. I'm not sure which.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, Judge, and please keep us updated on that, because I imagine if there is a live stream, we'd want to make sure to help promote it so you can get an even bigger audience, and we'd all love to learn from your tutelage. So thanks for the update on that.
Sure.
Judge, a lot has happened since you've been gone. The attempted assassination of Donald Trump, the rise of Kamala Harris to the Democratic nomination, the downing of so many flights after the software error. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. That and Joe Biden's threat against the Supreme Court. So let's work in reverse order here. Talk about the most up-to-date news right now, which is the threats that Joe Biden is making against the Supreme Court. What is your take on what Joe Biden is proposing in order to what he calls reform SCOTUS?
Well, most of what he wants to do requires a constitutional amendment, which, as you and your listeners know, is so cumbersome, requiring the affirmative consent of 2/3 of each house of Congress and 3/4 of the legislature. It simply isn't going to happen. It's not going to happen in the duration of his presidency, which now has 6 months to go. And it's not going to happen in the foreseeable future. Madison intentionally made the amending process one that requires a clear national overwhelming consensus before you can have that kind of an agreement to amend the document. So if you want to reduce the terms of Supreme Court justices from life, which is where they are now under the Constitution, that would require a constitutional amendment. However, if you want to add to the size of the Supreme Court, that does not require a constitutional amendment. The size of the Supreme Court, currently 9, and it's been 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 throughout our history, can easily be done by a majority vote in Congress on simple legislation. I don't think there's the will for that now. And I don't think it would happen in Joe Biden's presidency, but it could easily be done. I myself, though I fiercely disagree with some of what the Supreme Court has done and fiercely agree with some of what it has done, am fiercely opposed to the idea of tampering with it. If the Democrats were to change the size of the Supreme Court to 11, so that, let's say, a President Harris could add 2. Well, then the Republicans, when they're in charge, will change it to 15. And this will just keep going on and on and on. And it won't be a court. It'll be a super legislature. And that's not what its purpose is. Its purpose is to be anti-democratic. Its purpose is to preserve the life, liberty, and property of the minority from the government. Its purpose is not to further the public policy of whoever happens to be in the White House at the time. On the other hand, I understand why he's doing this. This is a hot button issue with Democrats and with some independents. And he has successfully injected it into the the presidential election campaign.
I actually think we may have found another issue, Judge, where I disagree with you. I actually think it would be wise, if President Trump were to be reelected, for him to increase the size of the court by 1 and to put you on it.
He did interview me twice for the court, and he has told some people he wishes he had chosen me, but we'll see. We'll see where that goes. That's
certainly it would have been better than Amy Coney Barrett. That's for sure. She's really proven to be quite a disappointment. Judge, let's talk about democracy. I want to throw you a little bit of a curveball here, Judge, because I know that you can handle it. We like to, as right-wing libertarians, we like to talk about the fact the United States is not a democracy. The left is always praising democracy, and yet they very undemocratically put Kamala Harris into this position as the presumptive frontrunner for the nomination of the Democratic Party. So isn't it the case, though, Judge Napolitano, that we, not being big lovers of this concept of democracy, really shouldn't necessarily, throw stones at the Democrats for this process? I mean, in some ways, we can point out their hypocrisy for how they put Kamala Harris, installed her as the Democratic frontrunner and really, they threatened Joe Biden out of the position, at least from everything I'm reading from Seymour Hersh and others. But I mean, we don't like democracy anyway, so who cares to some extent? How do you feel about that way of looking at things? A little controversial?
I agree with you. The courts have ruled that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are private organizations. And they can really set their own rules as long as those rules don't violate public policy, as long as they don't make judgments based on race or gender, or they obviously make judgments based on creed because they only want people of like mind in their parties. But is there anything wrong with this national consensus among the left for Kamala Harris? Should there be laws that require her to undergo the primary process? No, the answer is no and no. They can choose their candidate however they see fit. When George McGovern and the Democrats discovered that Senator Thomas Eagleton of Missouri had received some sort of bizarre electronic treatment after he had been nominated for vice president, they persuaded him to resign, and the Democrats got together and quickly nominated Sergeant Shriver. It didn't help them in their race against Richard Nixon, but it was perfectly lawful. So they can really use almost any system that they want to choose their candidates. I'm kind of amazed that she has done as well as she has in the polls. I think she would win if the election were today, but it's not today. It's 3 months from today.
Judge, looking back in history, I'd love to tap into your superior knowledge of this. I've been trying to find a time when there really was a properly contested primary for either the Republicans or the Democrats. It may have been Barry Goldwater's nomination in 1964 against the Rockefeller Republicans, but from almost all of his history, when I look at the nominating conventions for president of the United States, whether it's Dwight Eisenhower in the 1950s or any other presidential candidate, it's always really been a smoky backroom deal. That's the way that presidential candidates have been nominated in political parties, which is, of course, a completely separate institution from the actual general elections. People often get those things confused, but really presidential nominees are typically more selected than elected. Isn't that the case?
Yes, it is the case. And I agree with you. The last truly popular contested presidential nomination was the Cow Palace in San Francisco in 1964, Barry Goldwater versus Nelson Rockefeller. They battled throughout the country, and then they had a climactic battle in the California primary, which Goldwater won. And that was just about enough to put him over the top. Rockefeller insisted on addressing the convention. The crowd booed. He flipped them the bird. He took his glasses off. He was furious at them. He stormed off the set, and then, of course, eventually became the vice president of the United States under very, very bizarre circumstances. But that was a great clash of ideas between Goldwater and Rockefeller. We haven't had that in many, many years. In the old days, before World War II and before telephones and televisions and radio, before World War I, these conventions went on for days and days and days with many, many roll call votes. But you're right, it was all political power and political machinations behind the scenes, deals which might have appalled the public had they been privy to them.
Now, there's just so much American history that most people will never learn in schools and will never touch on, but most everyone has an opinion about how politics should run, but very few people actually get involved, which is why I think the founding fathers set up this system. And despite the fact that they would not have approved of the party system as it is run today, they are private institutions that are at least they're about as independent from the government, I guess, as the Federal Reserve is, Judge, which maybe is saying that they're not really all that independent. We do pay for their conventions and they do rig the system to a large extent. So I don't want to, pretend as if they are truly all that independent. But of course, most people have no idea how the president of the United States is elected, Judge. But, this is why we're not a democracy, because most people don't take the time. They either don't have the time or they don't take the time and they don't care to learn about the process, which is why people like that, Judge, they don't deserve people who show up once every 4 years to mark a dot in a piece of paper. They shouldn't have the same amount of say as people like you or I who would show up to a convention or show up to a meeting or who are active trying to advance our ideas every single day. That's what they really mean, right? That it's not a democracy. It means that it's not one person, one vote. It's one person could vote every 4 years unless you get involved, and then you really can have more of a say.
I am loath to quote Bill Buckley, especially since we learned after his death that during all those years of supposed conservative activism, he was an asset of the CIA. But he did once say, in defending the poll tax, he was in favor of as many potholes as possible on the road to the ballot box to deter those who would vote because of a candidate's dimples or eye colors or physical appearance from voting, so that only those who truly were interested in the outcome voted. It was an interesting observation. I remember defending that at one point, and of course being excoriated for doing so.
Hey, blind squirrels can find a nut, every once in a while. Judge, you and I are intimately familiar. Our former boss, Roger Ailes, rest in peace, with his memo to Richard Nixon and to the Republican Party after the disastrous defeat by the Democrat John F. Kennedy of Richard Nixon at the time in that debate. The Roger Ailes memo was to try and solve the problems that you just identified there, that the American people, in watching John F. Kennedy debate Richard Nixon, chose John F. Kennedy largely based on his personality, his looks, and his charisma. Whereas back in the 1800s, the ugliest candidate could win. Now you do have to have something of a savoir-faire. You do have to have good looks. You do have to be tall. Did you know that the majority of United States presidents have blue eyes? It's the wildest statistic when you consider that blue eyes is one of the rarest traits for humans to have. And yet, for some reason, including George Washington, George Bush, most of them had blue eyes. And it's likely because voters found them to be beautiful, attractive, and went to the polls. So it's reasons like this that people like you and I talk about why we are not in favor of democracy, because democracy really is two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner, correct?
Correct. And Madison understood that. That's why we have the Electoral College, which theoretically could defy the voters in their own state if the electors felt that the voters had been carried away by a madman. Madison intentionally wanted that last check, if you will, between the popular will and the power of the presidency. And I assume most Americans know this. I don't know, but it is not their votes that elect the president. It is the votes of the Electoral College that does so.
Yeah, most people don't even know how electors are selected, and it is quite an arcane process, and it's something that you really have to be deeply involved in order to manage to become one. But let's talk about that a little bit later. Judge, I don't frequently truck with conspiracy theories. I prefer to truck with conspiracy facts. However, there is one conspiracy theory that I have been mulling in looking at the potential assassination of Donald Trump, in knowing how much the deep state and the left and the Democrats have been threatening to kill him, engaging in stochastic terrorism, holding up his bloody head, in trying to drive psychopaths who are on the edge of madness, like this Thomas Crook's character, to commit this heinous act against President Trump. This form of stochastic terrorism that the left has been engaging in has led us to this day. But I can't help but wonder, Judge, noting the fact that the Trump campaign was asking for extra security from the Secret Service and was refused the protection that they asked for, and noting the lack of quality of the candidates who were surrounding him that day, that I can't help but wonder, Judge, if many people who were supposed to protect him might actually want him dead, and by some lax guard, may have tried to allow something like that to happen. That is a conspiracy theory at this time until it's proven conspiracy fact, but it's one that I'm exploring, Judge. How about you?
Well, there certainly are a lot of unanswered questions, and there probably will remain unanswered. The Secret Service crew that was protecting him was brand new. They barely knew each other, much less knew him. They weren't his regular team. There were so many odd events that happened on that day. Now we find out that this kid was spotted by so many people in law enforcement. Some in law enforcement thought he was one of their own. The Secret Service is pointing fingers at the locals, and the locals are pointing fingers at the Secret Service. I don't know who to believe. I have some friends in the Secret Service who are texting me regularly, and they fiercely defend their institution and point the fingers at the local police. And the local police are saying, we weren't in charge. We just did what we were told to do. They should have been able to communicate with each other. They should all have known who each other was. There shouldn't have been any doubt in anybody's mind that those who saw this kid knew that they were looking at a potential killer rather than one of their own. I don't know if these answers will ever come out. I mean, JFK was murdered 50 years ago. You and I have theories about that. Our friend and colleague, Jacob Hornberger, has written masterful work on it. There's the general belief that the government's version is intentionally wrong and that he was shot from the front, which means it was somebody other than Lee Harvey Oswald. But these questions will never be answered with certainty. The same thing will be the case with this Trump event.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Peterson speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano. He's the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, and you can download that on any of your mobile devices. He also has a weekly column that you can read. It's must reading for true libertarians, which, of course, I am the only one. Just kidding. You can read that at judgenap.com. It's a great website and a great place to keep up with everything that he's up to these days. Judge, did you find a little bit of irony in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on one hand saying that the CIA murdered his father, and yet on the other hand calling for Secret Service protection from the same government that murdered his father? Wouldn't he be better off with private protection anyway, considering the recent track record of the Secret Service anyway? I mean, would you want to be protected by the Secret Service if you think this is the same government that assassinated your dad?
Well, the answer to your last question is no. The answer to the first question is he probably wants to save the money. I mean, this kind of protection is enormously expensive. You're talking about dozens of people 24/7. And of course, the Secret Service can arrest, which private security cannot do. But I agree with you. It is ironic that he should be asking for it. He asked for it. He got it. He now has it. I would imagine post January 19th or 20th, whatever the day was that Trump was shot, the protection is pretty vast and pretty extensive and pretty expensive and will last until Election Day.
Judge, I have a confession to make to you, and I hope that you will not be too mightily disappointed in me when I tell you that I will be voting for Donald Trump this fall. I've been voting Libertarian and been an active member of the Libertarian Party for a number of years, but I will be voting for Donald Trump this fall, not just because, I feel like the deep state tried to assassinate him or because he owns the libs, if you will, but largely because Donald Trump defeated the neocons when we, the Libertarians, could not. I see in the Republican Party the warmongers and the nanny statists like Nikki Haley and others who are desperate in desiring to return to power if Donald Trump were assassinated or if he were not to win the presidential campaign this fall. Donald Trump acts very much, in my respect, and I want to get your take on this, as a bulwark between us and the old power-mongering neocons who wish to restore their place in the Republican Party. Donald Trump threw the Heritage Foundation under the bus last week with their Project 2025. Lots of it in there probably you and I might even agree with, but he is willing to even anger conservatives in the Republican Party and take stands on issues like he did where he passed the First Step Act, the criminal justice reform in his first term, cutting regulations, cutting taxes. And I look at the Libertarian Party candidate, and that candidate has bought into the woke left's platform. There's no daylight between them and those who tear down statues, who want to destroy the cultural heritage of the United States. I mean, Donald Trump angers conservatives, in which, you and I, being libertarian Republicans or libertarians ourselves, we don't necessarily agree with everything conservatives do. So sometimes I like when he angers conservatives because he's actually being more the things that conservatives are upset with him about. He's being more libertarian on, like the First Step Act or other things, right to try that he signed, for example. So could you understand why someone like myself could vote as a libertarian, could vote for Donald Trump, looking at Justice Gorsuch and looking at his record of accomplishments, like far better record than Ronald Reagan, even, for example, maybe the most libertarian president we've seen since Calvin Coolidge, if not a pure libertarian like ourselves? Could you understand sort of that line of thinking, the bulwark against neocons vote, if you will?
Well, according to him, if you vote for him this time, you won't have to vote in 4 years.
Great. Save me a lot of time.
Yeah. He'll probably do what Reagan did, which is surround himself with the neocon monsters like Mike Pompeo and Tom Cotton and that crowd. And if he does, it's Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and all of his verbiage for America First, and we're not going to be involved in foreign wars, will be just that. Our friend Walter Block, who also claims to be the most libertarian person in the room, supports Donald Trump as well. And when I asked him why, he said, well, if you had to be publicly whipped and you had the choice between 10 lashes and 5, which would you choose? You would choose the 5 lashes. So he feels that Donald Trump is the lesser of 2 evils. But you're right, there is nobody for libertarians to vote for this time around. I have libertarian friends that are voting for Jill Stein, but they're voting for her just on the basis of her foreign policy views, which are identical to yours and mine. I have no idea what her views are on domestic policy. But the the organized libertarian movement without Ron Paul has just collapsed, and they really can't draw people like you and me in an intellectually fulfilling way. I mean, I had no problem voting for Gary Johnson, but this young man that's running this year is a crackpot and shouldn't be representing the views of maximum individual liberty and the primacy of the individual over the state and personal freedom and economic freedom and peace, because this is just not his thing. Bobby has some libertarian tendencies in him, but he is so dead wrong on Gaza. And whenever I mention Gaza to him, he just explodes and tells me to stop badgering him about it.
Well, it's a shame, Judge. I know that you feel like you're in the wilderness. I will say that, being a libertarian Republican, that the MAGA people have been much more amenable to our ideas than the neocons ever were, that there is very much fertile ground in the Republican Party for people of our ideological ilk. What I find fascinating is this situation where the Republicans used to talk a big game about free markets, but they did the opposite. Now many Republicans say they don't believe in free markets, and at least they're honest about it, like the Democrats.
Well, Donald Trump doesn't believe in free markets. He's going to raise taxes by imposing embargoes. He doesn't imposing tariffs. He doesn't understand that a tariff is a tax.
You're right, but that would be constitutional, would it not? His proposal has been to replace the income tax with tariffs, which would at least be constitutional, correct?
Yes, it would be constitutional if Congress were to enact it, but he's not talking about replacing the income tax. He's talking about supplementing the income tax.
My understanding was, and I would double check this, I could be incorrect, but my understanding was that he did make a very formal public statement about 4 weeks ago that he would like to completely abolish the income tax and replace it with tariffs as it was originally in our Constitution. Of course, that would require a constitutional amendment because you'd have to overturn the 16th Amendment. It seems to me as if Trump has capitalist instincts while not understanding the intellectual underpinnings of such. If he were to nominate someone like Thomas Massie to the head of the Department of Agriculture, and Massie actually stepped up last week, these victories for liberty, we've got nothing since Calvin Coolidge. I can't look in my daughter's eyes and say, I didn't take every chance that I could to try and build a better future for you, even if at the loss of some of the principles that I believe in, I was able to advance a very good thing in getting someone like Massey elected to a position like that, nominated to a
Well,
position
who
like
cares
that.
about the Department of Agriculture? If he wants to do the right thing with Thomas Massey, he should put him as the head of the Federal Reserve. Then I'll believe. Then I'll believe that Trump has some understanding of capitalism. The Supreme Court is yet to rule on whether the Federal Reserve can regulate interest rates. If Thomas Massey were there would be no regulation, and interest rates would rise and fall by supply and demand, just like the price of everything in the United States, except for rental housing in New York City, where a World War II temporary law still exists, would be the function of supply and demand. The problem with Trump is, and I say this as somebody that knows him very, very well and has known him for 40 years, is there's many a slip between the cup and the lip. He doesn't always follow through on what he says he's going to do. The Patriot Act has a section 702, that permits the feds to spy on foreign persons without search warrant, and thus on the Americans with whom they communicate. When that was, it has a sunset clause every 5 years. When that was sunset in 2019, Congress passed it, and it was on the president's desk, and he was going to sign it or veto it. It was 6:30 in the morning. I was hosting Fox and Friends. I looked in the camera. I said to my two colleagues, give me 30 seconds. Mr. President, veto this legislation. It's the same mindset that spied on you when you were a candidate. It's a profound violation of the Fourth Amendment. You took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. 15 minutes later, the White House announces the president's going to veto the extension of Section 702. Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, Mike Pence, and another unnamed person, because that was my source, go running to the Oval Office and change his mind. And he says to this other person, tell the judge they twisted my arm. And the other person said to me, Trump said, well, the judge says the Constitution prohibits this. Whereupon one of those three, Ryan, Pence, McConnell, said, well, the judge thinks the Constitution means what it says.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, host of the Judging Freedom podcast, a good friend and a True North libertarian. I regret to announce that I have fallen short of True North today. I'm voting for Donald Trump anyway. Judge, thank you for your
love you, and I love your wife, and I love your baby, and I love your new program and your new network, and wish you the best of everything.
Thank you, Judge. Anything else that our listeners should know before we let you go today?
I have the great, maybe the next Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense, Douglas McGregor, on at 2:00 Eastern today. We have so much to talk about because we haven't talked in 2.5 weeks.
We've got a lot to discuss. I'm really excited to watch that one, Judge. So good luck there, and good luck to Colonel McGregor. I hope that he gets that position. That would be another good reason to vote for Donald Trump. Thank you, Judge,
Absolutely.
and have a wonderful day.
See you next week. All the best.
See you next week. Crowds of protesters in Venezuela. The dictator Maduro refuses to step down as the people step up. Where does the military stand? Let's speak to our U.S. Latin American envoy. It's Tony Martinez when we get back on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
America show's bonus content this week looks at vice presidents who became presidents in recognition of the potential future presidency of VP Kamala Harris. Harry S. Truman became the 33rd president of the United States upon Franklin Delano Roosevelt's death in 1945. He led the country through the final stages of World War II and the early Cold War. Born in rural Missouri, Truman left his family's farm to lead an artillery unit in France during World War I. After the war, he and an army friend opened a men's clothing store in Kansas City, Missouri, which eventually failed. Truman turned to politics and was elected presiding judge of the Jackson County Court in 1926. In this role, he built a reputation for honesty and efficiency, paving his way to national recognition. In 1934, Truman was elected to the U.S. Senate. During World War II, he led a Senate committee investigating inefficiency and corruption in the military, earning him national recognition and a spot as vice president in 1944. As vice president, Truman had little influence over American policy. President Roosevelt seldom consulted him, leaving Truman unprepared when Roosevelt died less than 3 months into his term. Despite this, Truman quickly adapted. He helped secure Germany's unconditional surrender in May 1945, ending World War II in Europe. He then attended a peace settlement meeting in Potsdam. In Potsdam, Truman learned of a successful atomic bomb test back home. He warned Japan to surrender, but when they refused, he authorized the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing over 100,000 people. We have used it to shorten the agony of war and save the lives of thousands of young Americans. We will continue until Japan's war-making power is destroyed, Truman declared, marking a controversial presidential decision. Days later, Japan surrendered. However, Truman soon faced a new threat, the Soviet Union's desire to extend communism. In 1947, he introduced the Truman Doctrine to oppose communist aggression worldwide. Truman supported the Marshall Plan, which provided billions to rebuild European economies and prevent communism's spread into Western Europe. Despite these efforts, Cold War tensions rose. In 1949, China fell to communism, and the Soviet Union tested a nuclear bomb. To counter Soviet expansionism, Truman led the U.S. into NATO, a military alliance with non-communist European nations. In 1950, the Korean War broke out as Communist North Korea invaded South Korea. Truman ordered U.S. forces to join UN troops in repelling the invasion, though the war continued past his presidency. The stalemate in Korea and the perception that the U.S. was losing the Cold War led to widespread criticism of Truman. His popularity plummeted, and he chose not to seek re-election in 1952. Truman retired to Missouri with low public approval. However, his reputation improved over time. He came to be seen as a common man who rose to the challenge during critical moments in history. Later presidents admired Truman's willingness to take responsibility. His famous motto, "The buck stops here," symbolized his leadership style and dedication to accountability.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at the For Liberty Network. Thanks so much for tuning in. Click the like button if you haven't already. If today's the first time watching the show, we'd love to have you be a regular guest. Like I see Sambucus X over on the Rumble chat. If it's your first time here, Sambucus, we'd love to have you be a regular guest. Make sure you click the follow button in the show's chat there above the chat so that you can come back and join us 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. That is the show's schedule. We've got a lineup of great guests today, 2 attorneys. Why not make it 3? The situation in Venezuela is becoming more and more untenable as the dictator Maduro, who lost his democratic election, is still claiming that he was the winner. People have taken to the streets. Some rioting has ensued. The military has at least tentatively declared that they're on the side of the people. But what does that even really mean? And what about when it's time for the military to get paid? We all know who signs their paychecks. Can it last? Can Venezuela have freedom, something like Argentina has? Could there be a peaceful revolution? Or is there only one way that dictators get kicked out of office? Let's talk to our own U.S. Latin American envoy, Tony Martinez, live on the show. Good morning, Tony, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Austin, and congratulations again to you and Steffi and baby Hazel. That says much joy, much health to the family.
Thank you, and right back at you. I know you had a new addition to your family as well, Tony, so mazel tov.
Well, I'm going to be a grandpa in November to a granddaughter, so Hazel's going to have a friend.
Oh, that's great, Tony. Well, thanks for keeping us updated on that. And we're glad that we have you as a friend of the show. Whenever you join us, we always know that we're going to find out what's happening in international affairs. But what happens in South America impacts what happens here in the United States. Many of the millions of illegal immigrants that have come to the United States have come from Venezuela, seeking the freedom that they have in the United States that they don't have in Venezuela. What's the situation right now? Give us an update on what's happening on the ground in Venezuela.
Well, I'm very concerned because clearly it was not a fair election, and Maduro basically stole the election. Let's be clear about it. They didn't put out the data to support their victory. They just declared it, and it just doesn't. The claims just didn't resonate with the reality of what's been going on over there. I mean, Venezuela's lost like 25% of its population, and over 8 million Venezuelans have left, and we've got probably, I think, over maybe a million that have come to the United States. Well, the elections are, I'm very concerned because, at the end of the day, this degrades to the point is who controls the military rules, who counts the votes, determines the election, and it's all Maduro. We'll see what happens if Edmundo and Maria Corina Machado, what they will do, but everyone needs to stand firm. I mean, in the same cast of characters. So Western democratic countries have all rallied behind the Venezuelan people, and of course, all the autocratic, theocratic, communist, socialist governments have rallied around Maduro, accepting his victory. And it's divided Latin America, and it's going to continue to drive migration to our southern border, the destabilization that we have in Latin America.
Tony, what is the scenario that could unfold where we actually could see a transition of power? Is there any peaceful solution that could possibly resolve in not having Maduro being the leader of Venezuela?
Well, I think if there was some, what I would call some delicate diplomacy, back channel communication, explaining in no uncertain terms that Maduro's position is untenable for the long term, that the situation is not going to get any better, it's just going to get worse. And if we give him an opportunity to have safe passage and allow for an orderly transition, that is one possibility. Unfortunately, we also have the lesson that we see what happens when a country disarms its people, which what they did to Venezuela. The government has all the weapons, and the tyranny continues. There's no check against it. The people in the streets have rocks and bottles, and they're, so it's an uneven fight. And again, as you said, the military is going to follow who's going to pay their paychecks. And while the Venezuelan people are suffering, I don't know if you noticed, but take a look at some of the video. Maduro was certainly flashing his, I don't know how much, is a very, very expensive Rolex watch. Where does he get all of this wealth from? And, there's been so much corruption in Venezuela. That's the other thing. And that's a problem that they have with this model. When the state controls, the people who actually run and operate the state, they become corrupt, and they're the ones that actually have it all. So it's really a terrible situation. I do pray that peace will prevail and diplomacy will prevail, but there's an effect, in essence, a kind of civil war that's already going on in Venezuela. The country's divided.
Now, if the people of Venezuela decided that violence was the only option in removing Maduro, and they may certainly be justified in doing so, given that he does not govern by the consent of the people, as we understand it, then can they just go and get their firearms like American citizens do and just overthrow Maduro with their guns?
No, they can't. They don't have them, and the quote unquote civilians that do have weapons besides the military are what they call the colectivos, that Maduro's sort of his people that are in the street. They're given weapons and motorcycles and all of that, and they can roam the street. He also announced something that's pretty 1984-ish Orwellian, that we see is they put an application, they put an app where they can tell the people, by the way, if you see so-and-so, or you see anything, you want to turn in somebody for being anti the government, here, just give us their information and turn them in. And it's turned the Venezuelan people against each other. It's really a tragedy what's going on there. And even the Carter Center, which is respected and considered a neutral observer. Anybody who wants to go to the Carter Center and look at their statement on the Venezuelan election. And they say very clearly, we cannot verify, corroborate the results of the election declared by the Venezuelan National Electoral Council. And the electoral authorities' failure to announce disaggregated results by polling station constitutes a serious breach of electoral principles. It's really tragic what's going on there. And it also presents a kind of an existential crisis. If we can't use elections to solve our differences and respect the outcomes, this will degrade back to what we had long ago, which is violence and revolutions.
Speaking of Tony Martinez, he is a U.S. Latin American envoy joining us this morning to talk about the situation in Venezuela. If you're enjoying this conversation, do click that like button and follow us at rumble.com/AP for Liberty. I see we have many hundreds of friends joining us over on X.com as well. Do us a favor, help spread these ideas of limited government by clicking that heart button as well as the repost button over on X.com to help us spread the ideas of liberty. We're speaking to Tony Martinez about the situation in Venezuela and what political options there may be, violent or otherwise. Tony, where do you see this going? Because it seems as if, unfortunately, Latin America is on a hamster wheel of socialist destruction, that there seems to be a bit of hope that comes about, and then it's just violently crushed. We've seen this in the Middle East as well with the Arab Spring, where the people never do manage to build a system that is capable of resisting this kind of tyranny. How did Argentina do it and have a peaceful revolution, and Venezuela can't accomplish the same thing? I mean, you had Javier Milei of Argentina saying that he wouldn't recognize the dictator Maduro, but at some level, if he crushes his people, and he'll have to at some point. So where does this all go? Would you guess?
It's really going to be up to the international community, and like I said, it's going to require like I said, some very delicate diplomacy and back channel conversations, because Maduro's have to realize that this is not going to get better for him. It's just going to get worse. And how does he expect to continue to rule? And he cannot isolate his country from the rest of Latin America. And if he's going to depend on other actors like Iran, Russia, China, it's just not going to work. And I think the international community has to get together, and like I said, there has to be a public face and a private face, and I think an exit strategy should be given to him, because otherwise there will be more deaths, and there'll be more, the violence will continue, and the destabilization is just going to continue. And we all need to take lessons from this, elections, even in Venezuela, where they claimed that they had the best election system because they have voter ID, and they have a dual system where their voter has to provide their fingerprint and their electronic data, as well as they do a paper ballot. And the thing that also and thank God for the paper ballot, because Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo had the they claimed, and I'm sure they're going to release, that they had collected at least 70% of the paper ballots from the polling stations, and that showed clearly verified that the victory was like 2/3 in favor of Edmundo and 1/3 for Maduro. And meanwhile, the Venezuelan National Electoral Council, which is controlled by Maduro, announced that he won by 51% of the vote. It's insane.
Tony, I'm reading this morning that the top brass of the military are declaring their allegiance to Maduro, but we have heard that the lower ranks of the military are siding with the people. What happens if Maduro calls on his military to crack down against their own people? Do they follow that command?
That's going to be tough. There will be some that will, and there'll be others that may actually defy those orders. Because there was video footage of some soldiers and military police that actually stopped, and you saw some of them actually taking off their uniforms and in tears because they really felt being pushed against the wall to attack their own people. And you can hear the people telling them in Spanish, say, "Look, why are you doing this to me? You're my family. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you supporting this repression?" And it's truly a tragic situation. I'm very concerned because also the timing of this, the United States is in the middle of a very complicated, a challenging electoral situation. All the world is in turmoil, really. And like, again, I do pray that peace will prevail, cooler heads will prevail in this, that there will not be violence. But if things don't change, I don't know what are the other situations going to be. I'm praying for diplomacy. And I hope that Maduro just realizes that the real vote against him is overwhelming, whatever he wants to think. But this is how it goes in these countries, unfortunately.
This is why I'll never, ever give up my guns, and more Americans should stay firm on the Second Amendment as well.
Very powerful lesson for the Second Amendment. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Tony, tangentially related to the Maduro question, but a 180 in terms of views of governance. How's our buddy Javier Milei doing in Argentina?
He still keeps racking up victory after victory, and the economy is improving. People actually are impatient, but he's had to tell them, things are moving in the right direction. They're keeping their surplus. Milei is actually validating theory on inflation, that it's a monetary phenomenon, and that if the government stops printing money, eventually things stabilize and an equilibrium gets restored in the economy, and the economy can move based on real economic power, not on the mythology that we can borrow our way to prosperity or print our way to prosperity. We have the same problem here in the United States, and we're going to be confronting this, I fear, very soon, because that's another economic reality. But thank God we have leaders like Javier Milei. Oh, by the way, that's another interesting factor. The leader that Maduro fears the most is Javier Milei. He actually, when he claimed victory, he challenged Milei to a boxing match. He says, "I want to go on a round. Come on, Milei." He's so afraid of Milei because Milei represents the truth about political power and people's power, about freedom, and is totally anathema to everything that Maduro believes in, because his whole concept or his reason for existence and his rationale is totally upended. And by the way, something else that was also interesting, that the people began to tear down statues of Hugo Chavez around the country. Very, very interesting. So there's nothing good headed for Venezuela if there isn't a change in leadership.
Well, God bless the good people of Venezuela standing for liberty. And God bless you, Tony Martinez. Is there anything else that you think we missed or you'd like to share before we let you go today?
Well, people can follow me on Twitter at USLATAM Envoy, kind of a citizen diplomat, but also a libertarian, a person who believes in freedom. And I try to always fight for the little guy. And for people who, I try to make government work when it fails, as I see it continuously as a lawyer. Sometime we can talk about it. Immigration is going to be a very interesting topic. I look forward to coming back on the show to talking about that, to see what will immigration look like in the next administration.
Well, we definitely will have you back as an expert on those topics and more, Tony. And thank you for your friendship and for being so generous with your time and joining us and helping to educate our audience on these issues. You have a wonderful day.
God bless you, and thank you, and good luck to everyone. Good health to everyone.
Thank you very much. Let's give Tony Martinez a round of applause. Grateful to have him on the show today. The Wake Up America show and the For Liberty Network are brought to you in part by people like yourself, but Our friends over at Preserve Gold have made a sizable investment in helping us to grow not only my show, but also the brand new shows that are coming this fall. If it weren't for my friends at Preserve Gold, I highly doubt we'd be able to afford to create 2 brand new shows on the For Liberty Network. Yes, we are doing well. Yes, we are growing here little by little, brick by brick. But Preserve Gold stepped in a big way to help us to build this network. And I have to say thank you very much to them. You can say thank you as well, because if you're a big believer in gold and silver, they've got a great deal going on, and they'll help to educate you about how to invest in gold and silver. Some people are shy about it or nervous about it. It's very easy to learn how to invest in gold and silver because our friends at Preserve Gold have set up a text line to send you a free gold and silver information package. So text the word Liberty to 50505. The word Liberty to 50505. Again, text the word Liberty to 50505. They're not going to spam you. They're not going to put your address or things on mailers like crazy. They're just going to send you a gold and silver information kit. They'll follow up with a phone call, and then you can decide if gold and silver is right for you. I know that it's right for us. I definitely can't wait to give my daughter Hazel her, well, I guess I can wait to give her what I would bequeath to her one day, but I will be excited to see her face when she gets that big bag of gold and silver that we will gift to her, and maybe another kid, maybe 2 more kids. It's the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network, growing our families and growing our ideas as we grow this network. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to exit through the Grift Shop at forlibertyshop.com. We've got a new Cuck Famila shirt. What is Cuck Famila? Cuck Famila? What is Cuck Famila? Well, if you go to forlibertyshop.com and you type in Famila or K-U-C-K, and you go to K-U-C-K, Cuck Famila, you can get our exclusive Cuck Famila shirt. What does Cuck Famila mean? Well, I'll let you figure that out on your own. You can get it in a variety of colors, a variety of sizes, and it's exclusive because nobody else made one. The Cuck Famila shirt, available at forlibertyshop.com. Exit through the Grift Shop. Thank you, Mighty Megatron. Thank you, Sambucus. Thank you, Mongoose87. Look, it's Liz. Thank you to Signs of Jonah, Courtney Conover, so many of our friends, Dad Bob Baboon, and all of our friends over on X.com as well. I hope to see you guys here tomorrow. Don't forget, Baby Hazel makes her appearance first time on the Wake Up America show this Friday, Freedom Family Friday. Come back on Friday. Make sure to join us so you can see little baby Hazel with her little red hair. We'll be back tomorrow on the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to Wake Up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor of your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unbore your space with our custom metal signs. Crafted with love and a bit of libertarian magic, you can customize your own metal sign at ap4libertyshop.com. So head to ap4libertyshop.com, customize your own metal sign today.
Welcome to a world of vocal discovery at Peterson Voice Studio. I'm Justin Peterson, here to guide your musical journey. Envision a place where your voice reaches new heights, where every note tells a story. We embrace all singers, from the enthusiastic shower vocalists to aspiring stars, ensuring each voice finds its unique rhythm and tone. Are you ready to elevate your voice? Visit petersonvoicestudio.com and sign up for remote lessons tailored just for you. Let's begin this melodious journey together.
Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP for Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your Founding Flavors at apforlibertyshop.com.